Warning. You've reached On the Box with Ray Comfort and are now in a biblical truth zone. Place all questions about theology, current events, and evangelism on the box, where they'll be weighed against the truth of God's Word. Ready your hearts and minds. You're about to be inspired and equipped to fulfill the Great Commission. Programming to engage in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Were you doing the wave, Mark?
Yes, the one-man wave.
That's a first here on the box. I wish you could have seen it.
You know, there's only one place you can't do a wave at, and that's a funeral.
Oh,
you can try it, but it typically doesn't turn out too well.
I would like you to do it at mine. I want
All
a
right,
first.
wave at Ray's.
Oh,
That's
boy.
being said here.
Your funeral is going to be a circus, right? Friends, this is a day that I have been waiting for a very long time. In fact, maybe that's why you can see an extra special glow on my face. Today is the day when we are going to unveil to the
Are
world.
you quitting?
Yay! Yay!
Oh, I just might, Ray. I just might. No, Ray. Today's the day we're going to unveil to the world your super-duper evangelistic steed, the Ray Comfort Pope Bike Mobile. Do we have it, folks? There it is in all its glory.
That's what Ray rides
That's
every
made
morning.
for comfort.
Ray, explain to us.
Well, there's
what
my
this is.
glasses. They're special glasses. What they've got, the MP3 glasses. I can listen to. I'm listening to Psalm 119 over and over and over with those glasses. They're just wonderful.
Okay, so as you ride, you have no ability to hear anything
I can't hear a
going
thing
on.
that's going on,
Okay.
which is great.
Very
And,
safe.
You know, anyone that gets in front of me, I've learned shaking the fist makes trucks get out of the way.
Right.
Which is great. There's the green stick.
Oh, there it is.
It's not just a stick, it's actually steel. And it's held on by Velcro, and it's because Sam is my dog, and I couldn't figure out why dogs all around the neighborhood would go crazy when they heard him coming, when he's running by me. And then I realized he looks like a rabbit. And so I thought
He's not that big,
if
right?
they attacked him, I just wouldn't be able to protect him. So I got this thing, and that's just to greet any dogs that try and eat my dog. The other day, 2 big black dogs started chasing us. They saw Sam. They were huge. They were about 3 feet off the ground, big black ones. And one ran ahead, and his owner was calling out, "Walter, Walter," which is a strange name for a dog. I don't know. I mean, I called Sam Sam. I wanted to call him Eric. But no one. Why is Sam okay for a dog? But
George would be a nice
George,
dog.
yeah, George is a nice name for dogs. But anyway, I just yelled out to this dog that was chasing us. I turned around and said, "Stay!" And the dog stopped dead in its tracks.
Oh, wow.
It was really good.
Authority does it.
So there's my glasses. That's a little kangaroo pocket there, which I keep Genius DVDs in. Quick to the drawer and give them to people as I'm going past them or throw them at them. I saw a guy looking at the canal. Looked like he was going to commit suicide the other day, and I asked him if he'd like a DVD, and he said he wouldn't. He said, no. And he was just dejected. So as I went past, I tossed it at him. And I went over the bridge.
He's getting it one way or another.
And I looked back, and he was reading the back. He'd picked it up.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So I was really pleased.
That's great.
So it's good to have that little kangaroo pocket there.
Right. So for those of you that don't know, Ray actually doesn't own a car personally. His wife has a car. He doesn't have a car, and he rides his bike everywhere he goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see this beautiful physique.
That's there. I don't.
Just kidding.
The reason I don't flex because it'll rip my skin.
Yeah, break my fingers.
Hey!
Oh, wow. Ray, that is some contraption. I'm sure one day it'll be worth billions of dollars.
Now,
in a
that was
museum
nice
somewhere.
and light, but an exciting thing that I heard yesterday is that Alan, our floor manager, producer, whatever.
He's leaving?
No. Was in the
You're leaving,
supermarket, and an elderly lady came up and touched his beard. She said,
yes.
"Can I touch it?" And I figured out what's going on.
Tell us.
She thought it was a cat.
It's getting there, Alan. It is
yeah.
getting there. We'll have to reveal that one day to our friends as well. Well, it's good to have you with us, friends. And today we are very encouraged and blessed to have our friends Jason and Lindsay from Ohio with us. So welcome them with us. Beach.
Why aren't you clapping?
Bless me. Did my applause work?
No, it
My
didn't
applause
work.
isn't
Yeah,
working.
Daniel's-
Oh, Daniel, have you been sabotaging?
It's probably not pushed in.
It's plugged in. Oh, well. Well, today we have a very interesting topic. It is an interesting
You won't
topic.
believe what this is
There's
about.
no way to get around us. And here is a question that we're going to be addressing today. Is it a sin to cuss?
Did you know cuss is a 4-letter word?
It is a 4-letter
it is.
word. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it just came to me.
Yeah. But, you know, we're making light of this. But in reality, this is a serious question. And I think it's a serious question more so because I think more than ever today in Christianity, we're seeing this sort of a new trend. I don't know if you call it a trend or this new style or whatever it is, but
It's a new stupid.
it's a new stupid. But really, where I've been seeing people who claim the name of Christ beginning to use profanity. And I remember at first I was kind of like, what's going on? And I started seeing it popping up everywhere. You're hearing about pastors that are cussing from the pulpit and using profane words from the pulpit. I mean, it's like this new thing. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of it and trying to figure out where it's come from. So, Ray, have you stopped cussing?
Actually, before I was a Christian, I didn't used to cuss. All my friends did when they talked about surfing, and I just thought it's kind of a low-life way to talk. It's the lacking vocabulary. And so I've always been offended by cussing. I don't like it. It's stupid.
But have you been noticing this new trend?
Well, only with non-Christians. They cuss all the time. But if any Christian... Years ago, I used to have this leather shop. It wasn't a leather shop. It was made of wood. But we used to produce leather jackets. And it was an old sort of shop. I think I paid $10 a week rent because it was such a heap. But I did it up, and I painted everything on the inside bright red, bright yellow, bright green, bright blue.
What?
Just bright colors down a hallway. And I had a Christian...
Is this the 70s? Or?
This is 1975.
Did you have beads?
What's that?
Did you have hanging beads?
No, that wasn't that was in our house.
We're learning all kinds of things about Ray Comfort today.
I had
friend.
a Christian friend named Alan. It wasn't this Alan. And I just loved the guy. He used to come in, and he couldn't believe I could make jackets because he knew I was such a klutz. And I showed him out the back, and as soon as he said it, he said a four-letter word beginning with S. Because and I was speechless. I thought, how can a Christian bring forth salt water and fresh water? It makes a bit of water and fresh water. And I didn't even know what to say to the guy. I was so shocked. I expect it from the ungodly, but the mouth speaks the abundance of the heart. So what comes out your mouth, Jesus said, is what's in your heart. And it showed me it's not nice what's in his heart.
Right.
And he's now with the Lord. So it's a shock when anyone who calls himself a Christian uses profanity.
Yeah, it is, and it should be, because, again, as Christians, we're to be distinct. We're to let our light shine before men, that they'd see our good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. And we're not to be of the world or to walk in the ways of the world. And sometimes I step back and I think, how are Christians who are now going with this new trend justifying this?
Yeah.
You know, because we know what Scripture says. So here are a few Scriptures that deal with this very matter. This is Ephesians 4:29. It says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." So no unwholesome word or speech coming from your tongue, but what's necessary for edification, encourage others. Here's another one. This is 1 Peter 3:10. It says, "For whoever would love life and see good days must keep his tongue from evil and his lips from deceitful speech." And then Colossians 3:8. "But now you yourselves are to put off all of these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth."
That's
and then,
pretty
of course,
clear, isn't it?
Oh, and then of course you referenced James 3:19 through 12. It talks about, you know, the blessings and the cursings coming forth from the same mouth, and he talks about the bitter and sweet water and so forth. So, I mean, I'm at a loss, and Mark, maybe you have some insight for us, but what's causing this? Is it just a worldliness seeping into the church, or some kind of...
Well, let's cross over the studio and see what Mark says.
Yeah. Mark.
Well, you know, sin is a condition of the heart, the man, the mind, and the inner man. You know, when you become a Christian, you know, everything has changed. You know, if any man's in Christ, he's a new creature. Behold, all things have become new. And when somebody begins to talk like the world to perhaps try to fit in, or maybe they don't even realize it. You know, Luke 6 says a good tree cannot produce bad fruit. You know, you just start seeing and realizing that things are coming out that are typically associated with the old man. You know, I was a lot like with Ray was at. You know, I didn't have a problem with cussing. I remember actually only saying 2 cuss words in my life, and the second cuss word I said, I was corrected by an adult when I did so, and it scared me so much I didn't want to do it again. That was a referee during a football game when I was playing football. You know, but, you know, I want to play a little devil's advocate here, you know, if I may. You know, I don't know exactly what they would say. You know, there's a very popular pastor out there. He's known as the cussing pastor. So I can't exactly defend his position because it's not typically where I'm at. And I don't know what he would say concerning some of the things that we're talking about here.
He might cuss you out for it, Mark.
Yeah, he might cuss me out. I don't know. But let me ask you this. It's just a word, I hear people say. You know, some of the words and the slang that we used 100 years ago, we typically don't use that language today. And if I were to adopt a 4-letter word, you might call it a cuss word, I'm not looking at it like that. It's a motive of the heart. What's wrong with me, easy, using these words today when I go out and about in my daily life? I love the Lord, and I just want to talk like this. What's wrong with that?
Right. Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. What's wrong with it is the fact that you would even have to pose that question. I mean, if you think about it, you would be, and again, we're playing devil's advocate. I'm not rebuking Mark, but you are in essence fighting to try to justify a word that you know has evil associations and vile associations in order to be able to use it. And so why in the world would you do that, right? So again, it comes back to, our motives and our intents. But again, I mean, I think what you would have as Christians taking some of these passages and again trying to parse them and dispute, well, what does this mean, and why do we even need to go there?
Right.
You know, the world understands what is filthy language.
There you go.
The world understands what is profane and what's considered cussing. Take that standard, and that's all you need. You know, and let me give you a personal testimony based on something I experienced when I was an unbeliever.
Well, please don't cuss.
I moved to a new neighborhood. And, there was a Christian family that lived in that neighborhood. And their son, growing up in a Christian home, befriended me quickly. And I remember he and I were going on his bike route. I was riding along with him. And I wasn't a Christian, and so I said, hey, and I threw out this filthy scenario and started using profane language. And I said, what would you do in this case? And I remember he looked over at me as we're riding our bikes, and he said, you know what, man, I'm a Christian. I don't think about things like that. And I was 12 years old. But I remember it just struck my heart like a sword. I was like, whoa, I've never met anyone like that. And it really stood out to me as a testimony. Well, years later, he definitely wasn't walking with the Lord. And he and I had gone to a party. We were driving back home, and we were both drunk. Shouldn't have been doing that in the first place, obviously. But he had started to use filthy language. He was cussing. I remember I was just about to get out of the car, and I looked over at him, and I said, hey, man. I said, what happened to you? I said, you used to be this Christian guy, and, you were, wholesome and pure and all this stuff. And man, you have changed. What's happened to you? And he told me later, I mean, he's right with God now, but he told me later, it was like a sword piercing his heart. And he thought, wow. So friends out there, you who want to just go about and think, you're using what is your liberty to cuss and use profane language. The world isn't deceived. They know the difference.
Right.
And you need to stand back.
After you guys left last night, you left at 3 o'clock to go for the commute home. There's a guy still in the store, and he said there's 2 guys in the alleyway smoking marijuana.
Right.
And I looked over, there's 2 really big guys. Well, one was really big, one was about my height. So I went over to witness to them, and I gave them a tract, and I said, what do you think happens after someone dies? And they started talking to me. Their language was just disgusting as they passed the joint to each other, just
in
cussing
front
away.
of you?
Yeah, of course. And this guy was real big, but it was expected. They're non-Christians smoking dope in an alleyway, and they're not going to change.
Right.
But I didn't rebuke them for their unclean talk. I shared the gospel with them, ended up praying with them both, laying hands on them and praying with them both. And that wouldn't happen. They would have been offended if I'd said. And I was just thinking this morning, my old dentist, well, he wasn't old, but my dentist that I used to go to would try and tell me dirty jokes, and he cussed like a trooper while he was drilling my teeth. And he'd say, I got this joke. I said, is it dirty? He says, yeah. And I put my hands on my ears, and he'd physically try and pull my hands off my ears so he could tell me dirty jokes. And I kind of found it funny because it's expected from the world to talk filthy because they're in the filth. They're going downstream. They're dead, all the dead junk. When a Christian comes alive, he turns and goes upstream because he's got the life of God in him, and he seeks after righteousness, and he wants to live pure. But if we did cuss as Christians, what's the world going to think of our testimony?
Right.
I love the Lord, blank, blank, beep, 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 beep. It's just like Mandeep.
Something doesn't match up.
Remember Mandeep?
I do.
They would call us hypocrites, I'm sure, if we told dirty jokes and let filthy communication come out of our mouth.
Right.
So we're to live in holiness. That doesn't mean to live in some little monastery with a vow of silence. Living in holiness just means to be separate from this world. I beseech you, brethren, as living sacrifices, present your bodies, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed through the renewing of your mind. And when your mind's renewed, your mouth will be renewed.
Right. And to also remember that Christians out there, you're representing more than yourself. Number one, you're an ambassador of Jesus Christ. So when people see you, they're immediately thinking, okay, this is what their Lord is like. I mean, Christian, like like Christ, right? They were first called Christians in Antioch because they saw that they walked like Christ and emulated him. But you're also representing the greater body of Christ. And listen to what Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy 4:12. Let no one look down on your youthfulness, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe. So even in our speech, like Paul says here, we're supposed to show ourselves an example of those who believe. And so please, friends, remember that. Mark, did you have something?
Yeah, well, you think about it. A lot of people say, how close to the world or to the line can I walk and still be a Christian? That really shouldn't be our concept,
right?
Our mentality. It's how far away from the world can I go? I don't even really think like that. I think I just want to pursue Christ. I want to sit with him in simplicity. I want to fellowship with other believers. I want to love on the one who's loving on me and set me free. That's my mentality. I want to draw near to God, knowing that he's going to draw near to me, knowing that all the dross in my life is going to begin to fade away and be done away with.
Right.
I don't want to be thinking like the world or begin to act like the world. It's not even a thought in my head. I don't want to head that direction. I don't want my kids to head that direction. This is very important as we begin to think of even blasphemy. Right. We're talking about impure language and things like that. Before I was a Christian, and I think Ray said the same thing, I don't ever remember using God's name in vain before I became a Christian. I don't think it ever happened. But we deal with it a lot inside my house. Not because people in my house blaspheme, but we have neighborhood kids, right, that come over to my house and they blaspheme. And my kids are always correcting them, always rebuking them and saying, hey, if you're going to talk like that, you're welcome to do so outside of this house because we don't talk like that here. Right. So we have to be careful on what we do. And I think the next question even touches upon this after we watch a little video, dealing with blasphemy. And how do you deal with people that are in your presence and they end up talking like a sailor, cussing up like a sailor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let us some sailors now.
Sailors.
And
My dad was a sailor.
And the thing that I've seen in more recent days, Mark's talking about kids in their neighborhood doing that, but I've been appalled to see how kids' language has gone down the slope around adults. Like they don't care anymore. Yeah, it's like I'll come up to witness the kids and I'll show them, maybe one of our optical illusions or something, blankety blank, and it's like there's no thought. This is an adult. You know, teachers can't even keep kids under control with their profanity. Some of our Greg Alsasser and some of our friends say it's just commonplace now. And no doubt Hollywood has a little something to do with it. So we're gonna watch this video to get a little insight.
Not too many people know the history of this famous town called Hollywood. Even fewer know about an interesting offer that was made to its settlers. In 1887, a Kansas real estate tycoon named Horace Wilcox began mapping out an area especially built for Midwesterners who were tired of ice and snow. The town banned saloons and offered free land to any church that settled there.
Can you believe that? Free land was offered to any church willing to settle in Hollywood? I mean, it's not much of an exaggeration to say that these days it seems like Hollywood would offer free land to any Christian willing to move out of the town. I mean, most people would agree Hollywood is not exactly the Bible Belt. Here's an interesting story. When a 19-year-old Canadian named Jim Carrey first arrived here, he said he was shocked. It was very traumatic, he said. I spent the first night in a seedy motel on Sunset Boulevard. He was reading the late, great Planet Earth, and it had a biblical reference that he wasn't familiar with, and since his room didn't contain a Bible, he asked the manager for one. He said, "Excuse me, sir, there's no Bible in my room." And the manager said, "Son, there isn't an entire Bible in all of Hollywood."
As soon as movies began around the year 1900, even though they were without sound, they were filled with sex and violence. Then in 1921, there was a public outcry when, among other things, a well-known actor was accused of rape and murder. A director was found murdered, and another actor died of a drug overdose. Hollywood was getting a bad image, so some studio heads hired a Presbyterian senator, William Hayes, to try and clean up Hollywood and convince the nation that it wasn't all bad.
Hayes persuaded the studios that abiding by a set moral standard was the safest and cheapest way to fix their troubles. If the industry would simply police itself, then government censorship wouldn't need to step in. Plus, the Hayes Code was a big money saver. Instead of paying to fix moral content after a film was done, the studios could simply follow the moral code before making the movie and everyone would be happy. So in 1930, Hayes Code was adopted, and it stated, pointed profanity. This includes the words God, Lord, Jesus, Christ, unless used reverently, damn, hell, or every other profane or vulgar expression, however used, is forbidden.
Then in 1934, the code was enforced. It had the authority to review all movies and demand script changes. If a theater ran a film without the proper seal of approval, it would be fined $25,000. The code had successfully forced studios to toe the line. Consequently, Hollywood began producing those wonderful, award-winning, heartwarming family movies such as Ben-Hur, A Tale of Christ, The Ten Commandments, It's a Wonderful Life, and many others.
However, Hollywood knew that there was big money in sex and violence. So during the 50s, some found a way around the Hayes Code through the free speech clause of the First Amendment, and studios began to push the moral envelope. In 1968, Hollywood officially abandoned the Hayes Code for filmmakers and shifted the moral responsibility to the parents with what we now have as the ratings system. The floodgates were suddenly open, and today's movies have literally no moral boundaries at all. Hollywood can make anything it wants. The majority of our movies are filled with unspeakable violence, horrible blasphemy, and graphic sex. But remember that poll? 87% of Americans want Under God kept in the Pledge of Allegiance. We know that G-rated movies make nearly 11 times more money than R-rated films. Studies show 80% of adults in America want more family-friendly TV.
Quite telling, isn't it?
Very.
You know, when you think about how much children are hearing today, day in and day out with what's on television. I mean, back, Ray, when you were growing up, I mean, it would have been a shock to turn on TV and hear profanity.
You wouldn't hear it.
Even in movies.
No.
It was because of the Hayes Code.
The Hayes Code held it back, and it was wonderful.
And it's not like, I mean, you and Sue sit and watch black and white movies all the time, and they're good.
It's the same one all the time.
You just keep forgetting.
Memories are going. Yeah, and they're wholesome. They got a great story, and people love them, and it's just sad that they've gone. Hollywood's gone the way it has.
Yeah. And
trash
I think,
in, trash out. That's what we're seeing
right.
in society.
And I think what we're seeing in the church is the world rubbing off on the church.
Absolutely.
And James talks about being unspotted by the world. That should be our passion.
You know what I'd like to ask these cussing pastors? How do they pray?
Wow.
Lord, blankety blank, I come to you in the name of Jesus. Right. In your righteousness I stand. Beep, 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 beep. Yeah.
That's a really good point, Ray.
So if you
How do you pray?
If you wouldn't say it in prayer, don't say it anywhere.
Right. Well, I've talked about my teacher in elementary school. It left a real impression on me. She was a long-term substitute teacher, and one day one of the kids in class was spouting off some profanity. And I remember she just stopped him dead in his tracks. She said, "Hey!" And the whole class just went silent. And she looked at him, she said, "How dare you, with those same lips that you pray to God with, use that filthy language?"
Wow.
I was probably, 9 or 10 years old. I never forgot that. And
it gives us a bound, gives us a fence to stay in. And even my Facebook page, it's cleaned up. I banned 960 atheists for cussing,
right.
And then I let them back in. We had a year of Jubilee, or a week of Jubilee, an amnesty. I said, you can come back in, just don't cuss. And then most of them aren't cussing.
Right.
Which is just wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we've talked about how you handle it when it's in your house, so to speak. Mark talked about kids in his neighborhood. You talked about your Facebook page. But we have a question here that generalizes it a little more. This comes to us from our YouTube episode. It says, in the factory I work at, I can't avoid hearing all kinds of blasphemy and cussing every couple of sentences. What should I do in a situation like that? I've been evangelizing, trying to turn conversations to godly things, but I don't know how to confront the cussing. So, Mark, what do you say to someone who's dealing with that on a day-to-day in a workplace?
Well, I typically expect sinners to sin. I expect dogs to bark.
Right.
I try to use them as a segue to preach the gospel when the opportunity arises. So when I get to the third commandment about using God's name in vain, I can bring to recollection something that they've said. I'm not going to correct everybody who uses God's name in vain or uses foul language or does things like that.
Right.
It's not something I typically do. Why? Because I'm expecting them to do that. That flows naturally out of them.
Yeah.
I remember I was working as a busboy. I was 27 years old, and I said Jesus pretty loud. And the whole restaurant just kind of stopped behind the scenes. And they all looked at me and said, Mark, you just used God's name in vain. And I said, no, I was crying out for help. And everything just went back to normal. They're, oh, yeah, of course. What were we thinking? That's what Mark does, and that's what Mark was doing.
Wow.
I might throw something out if the situation arises. Maybe it was a light scenario, say, for somebody who's not very religious, you sure do talk about God a lot, and I might throw a chuckle out there and look for a way to talk to them.
Right.
But,
When I'm open there preaching and a heckler's using filthy language, I say to him, there's ladies present, which please, we respect them, would like you to, and they often apologize.
Right.
I did get beaten to a pulp once by a woman who I told off for cussing at Santa Monica.
What'd you say to her, Ray?
She was using the F word. I said, ma'am, can you watch your language? There are ladies present. And she said, I'm a lady. I said, ma'am, you may be a woman, but you're not a lady. And she beat me up. I tell you, she punched me, and I think bruising took 2 weeks to go away. When the team let her go, they pulled her off, they let her go. She said, let me get my handbag. She came up behind me and gave me a kidney punch.
So, friends, Ray doesn't deal with the fear of man. It's the fear of woman.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Goliath was a woman.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's so true. Again, like Mark said, we shouldn't be surprised by the world, right? Orange trees have orange blossoms on them. Dogs bark, cats meow. And unbelievers, like we did, act like unbelievers. So don't go dealing with the symptoms. Deal with the root. Preach the gospel. And they'll maybe refreshingly surprised that a Christian isn't, out there pointing fingers at them, because that's not what it's about. Preach the gospel and let God do the work.
And we've heard it all anyway nowadays.
Right.
It's not like it's a shock.
All right, Mark, we're going to let you close us out with the tool of the day.
oh, boy. Okay, this is actually a really neat tool. It's How to Live Forever Without Being Religious. It deals with our very popular booklet that Ray wrote entitled Save Yourself Some Pain, but the majority of it is actually the Gospel of John. It's some really beginning steps that you can give to people when you're engaged into a conversation with them. You feel like it's gotten somewhere. Maybe the light is clicked on, and you're saying, man, this was a real divine appointment. So it gives them some life-saving techniques really to do in your spiritual walk. How do I go? What do I do next, now that I'm a Christian? And it talks about, hey, engage in prayer, get baptized, go to a local church. But that's it. Available at livingwaters.com. Don't want to miss it. It's great.
And if you have any questions, please email us to onthebox@livingwaters.com. Look us up on onthebox.us. And don't forget to check us out on Facebook as well. Thank you, as always, for watching. We look forward to seeing you again on Monday.
God willing.
For questions about On the Box with Ray Comfort, or to submit questions for future shows, please email onthebox@livingwaters.com. That's onthebox@livingwaters.com. On the Box with Ray Comfort is an outreach of Living Waters. For more resources to inspire and equip you to fulfill the Great Commission, check out livingwaters.com or call toll-free 1-800-437-1893. Now go and preach the gospel.